here at the goat pasture again today. We just got done making a little paddock move with our goats, and anyhow, I wanted to make a video about deer hunting and running goats. There's a lot of different opinions out there on this subject, so everybody will probably have a slightly different one than me, but I just want to give kind of my take on a few elements of running goats and hunting deer on any given property. When you practice rotational grazing and your stock is always moving around the property, what it allows for the majority of the property to be livestock free. So if you have 100 acres and you have 10 different paddocks of 10 acres, 90% of your property is livestock free at any given time. And so a lot of times the hunters that I've talked to or that I know, or the idea that I get is that the livestock being on top of them, runs the deer off, it creates a distraction for the hunt and all those kinds of things. So if an area can be void of livestock and all the goings-ons that come along with that, it's better for the hunt. So if you can have the majority of your property, like I say, livestock free, it lends itself better to that activity. Furthermore, when you have rotational grazing and the livestock are in a small location, a specific location on the property, everybody that's coming and going on that property, the hunters is what I'm getting at, they know where that livestock is any given day if they're on the property, but more importantly, they know where they're not. And so for instance, if a guy was going out to his deer blind and a Saturday morning first thing, and he's on a place that's doing set stock grazing, so the stock has access to the entire place all the time, no interior fences, and he goes out to his favorite deer blind first thing in the morning to find out that, oh, the livestock made camp last night right there on that deer blind. And so his hunt is going to have to be altered now. Whereas if you were in a rotational system and that guy had been out there the day before or a few days before, or had communications with the rancher, he would know that, okay, the livestock is in this section of the pasture. The deer blind I want to hunt this weekend is over here. I know there's not going to be any livestock on there. Or, you know what, they're getting ready to move that stock to that specific area. I need to go look over somewhere else where I've got a deer blind set up somewhere else. So that's how I view the rotational grazing and the benefits that it can provide to hunting. Some people will have designated pastures that they put the livestock in and they won't hunt, which is okay, except for you just limited yourself, one, on the revenues that can be generated from the hunting. You have some pasture there now that you can't hunt the entire season, whereas with a rotational system, you might have a certain section of a pasture that is off limits for 3 days, maybe a week, but then the rest of the season it's available. So you create more country to hunt by doing that way versus the other of okay, we've got a set pasture that we're only going to be in that pasture. So those are some of the aspects to look at and to think about. So in addition to that, I want to talk about deer feeders. I'm in North Texas, and in our part of the world, which I know this is not the case in lots of other places, so it won't apply to a lot of folks, but in our part of the world, it's a very common thing for deer feeders to be set up and to throw out corn or some sort of deer specific pellet to draw the deer in out of the brush and have them come to an area kind of on a regular basis and kind of get to drawing them in, and guys will hunt that way. And with that comes its own set of problems, especially if you're like me and you're running goats. Those goats are highly attracted to the corn, just like cattle, but it's a little harder to keep them out, to fence them out of these deer feeders. You know, you can see the fence that's around me here for this particular deer feeder. You know, it's three strands of barbed wire put up quite poorly, I might add. You know, and it's going to keep some cows out, but it's certainly not going to keep any goats or any sheep out for certain. Well, anyhow, when you have that set up, those goats are able to get inside the feeder, able to get access to that feeder, and if it's throwing off feed, that's a problem. Well, one way that we combat that, and I should back up just a second and tell you that with that, when those goats get in there, then they start to be a little destructive on that deer feeder. Those goats will stand on hind legs, and a lot of deer feeders will be a tripod with a barrel hanging in the middle and a spinner throwing corn out. Well, those goats will reach up there and they'll get to beating on that spinner, the mechanism that throws that corn. It's usually battery powered or a little solar charger on the battery, and anyhow it'll spin that feed out every so often, and those goats will get up there and they'll beat on it with their front feet and they'll tear it up, destroy a perfectly fine expensive deer feeder. That's a problem. Well, one way that we combat that destructive behavior is by, when we push these goats into a certain area that have a deer feeder on it, we'll go and turn that deer feeder off. The goats and the livestock guardian dogs, are already going to be in that area and probably push the deer out of that immediate area. So you're not really feeding any deer anymore. So you're just wasting corn and then inviting the goats to come up to that deer feeder and cause some damage to it. So we simply turn the deer feeder off. It stops throwing corn, so you eliminate the attractant to bring those deer or those goats in there and destroy your deer feeder. So that's the number one way that we've dealt with it. A lot of folks, they'll fence out their deer feeders. They'll do a better job. They'll put up better fencing than what we have here. But a couple issues with that. One is it's more expensive to put up any kind of goat fence as compared to a cow fence, or a simple barbed wire fence. So you have additional expense. A lot of times deer hunters, they don't want to make that concession to put up the specialized fencing, and then the rancher doesn't want to put up the fencing because it's not their deer feeder, and so the problem kind of snowballs, and the dynamics are different for a lot of different people. If the rancher's in control of the hunting or whatever, it'll change people's outlook a little bit, but it is an additional expense to do the fencing. Additionally, some hunters, they want to have access, for hogs, to hunt hogs. Those hogs will come in there, they'll get on some of that corn. That might be something that those hunters want to hunt. And if you fence the hogs out, well, you fence the goats out as well. So that's same money. So you've had those couple different ways of prevention. And the last one that I want to share with you is this deer feeder right here. The style of it is what I like, the design of it. And basically they put a feeder lower to the earth, but they put this sheet of metal underneath here. And basically the sheet of metal goes around the whole underside of that feeder and protects the spinner. And so it's got a little 1 inch gap or whatever, 1.5 inch gap to throw that corn out. So the spinner's inside there and it can throw it 360 out of there. But this simple sheet metal that they installed prevents anything from being able to have access to that spinner, and makes it a pretty indestructible kind of deer feeder. And so I really like this design. I've actually seen some others that this box is actually built up on a frame that has skids on it, to where you can just simply pull it with a four-wheeler or pickup or whatever if you need to move it on the ranch a short distance. So I thought that was another handy little feature, whereas a lot of the deer feeders that I'm familiar with, like I said before, they're on a tripod, they're up in the air, they're hard to fill. But this little feeder here sits low to the earth. If you're feeding with sacks, it's real easy to take the top off, fill it up. So I think it's a good design that plays into grazing goats in addition to trying to hunt some deer on a place. that's a good idea. But anyhow, the video is probably getting long enough here talking about this subject, but I think it's something important. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding on things with deer hunting and running goats. They can be compatible, but it takes some thinking and some planning and some analyzing and constantly tweaking. It's not a simple thing. So to think that there's not going to be any problems if you just chunk some goats out there and not tell your deer hunters about it, it's probably not going to work out very well. But it's something that can be worked around, and there's a few different ways to do it. But hope some of these ideas help some folks out there. Maybe they'll get something from it. And enjoyed making the video. Look forward to the next one. You all have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.